What a day in every way. You had so many things going on. The president going to Capitol Hill. I mean, we actually should probably start with Casey because what a day to be a Capitol Hill reporter, Casey. You have a day where the president's coming up on the Hill. Bob Corker, as Willie and Mike and I were just saying yesterday, Bob came in hot. Yesterday.
That's an understatement.
And then Jeff Flake delivered a speech on the Senate floor that you said and many others said people would be remembering years from now.
I think that's right, Joe. I mean, look, this was a day, my head was spinning by the end of the day because where we started all the way through to Bob Corker, the president, had just left Capitol Hill, and suddenly I was listening in my ear to, what we had playing, and the words that Jeff Flake had for the president were incredibly serious, incredibly an attempt to put this in historical perspective and give voice to his frustration and what he was seeing around him. And this is a guy who was incredibly well-liked, well-respected, incredibly conservative, somebody with one of the most conservative voting records, but who had earned the respect of his Democratic colleagues, was a member of the Gang of Eight, took political risks on immigration. And I think that the senators in both parties that I talked to yesterday came away with a real sense of loss around this retirement.
Far beyond a rebuke.
Far beyond a rebuke, and this shows the insanity that has overtaken the Republican Party. I always joke when people would come and say, "Oh, you're a liberal." I say, "Well, I had a 95% lifetime conservative rating, and I haven't really changed any positions." Jeff Flake, who is supposed to be this big liberal, that some goons over at Fox News, I won't mention his name, are attacking. Jeff Flake has a 96% lifetime conservative rating. He is the conservatives' conservative. He is the champion and has been his entire life of small government, of free trade. I mean, so when Jeff Flake becomes, Mike, too liberal for your party is headed towards the tar pits, which is exactly what's happening here. And we haven't even talked about Bob Corker.
Yeah. Joe, it's hard to measure moments like this in terms of history because history is such a long haul. But it's not hard to measure this moment in terms of what is going on right now within the Republican Party. This is a slow slide of principled conservatism among Republicans that has been an honorable part of your party for many, many years. A slow slide of that principled conservatism into something that resembles a dumpster fire. I mean, what people like Bannon are doing within the Republican Party, the lack of cohesion, the lack of a voice within the Republican Party other than people like Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, it's truly an astounding moment politically.
To your point, Joe, you have pro-Trump conservatives defending New York Democrat Donald Trump against 96% approval rating conservative Jeff Flake. Things are turned upside down.
Who's been a conservative, by the way, his whole life.
Yeah.
That had a 96% conservative
and
rating.
not Trump. We're talking about
when
Flake.
Donald Trump was giving money to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and giving over $100,000 a year to the DNC and supporting pro-choice candidates and supporting pro-gun control candidates, Jeff Flake, Bob Corker, they've all been consistent.
And this is the end of 8 or 9 days. We're living in extraordinary times. We all know that. But this is the last 8 or 9 days, especially. If you start with John McCain's speech in Philadelphia and go forward, I'm only talking about Republicans. This doesn't include Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
President Bush's speech.
You go from John McCain to George W. Bush to Bob Corker, Jeff Flake yesterday. These are Republicans who feel the need and are compelled to come out and reaffirm not just conservative values, but American values and say this is what's happening right now is not who we are. I don't know. Have we seen anything like this? 9 months, 10 months into a presidency where members of his own party are coming out like this, lining up to criticize him this way?
We haven't. And what you're seeing here, let's make no mistake of it, what we're seeing here is it's political suicide. It's the coming end of the Republican Party where you are losing guys who are temperamentally moderate, who have 96% conservative ratings and can win like states in Arizona, which are shifting. And they're going to be replaced by conspiracy theorists who are going to get blown away at the polls. And the same thing's happening. You've got Steve Bannon getting people that have been convicted of crimes, served time in jail as his alternative. This is an act of nihilism. And the question is, Mika, what happens to the Republicans who are remaining there? Did they really give Donald Trump a standing ovation yesterday after saying he was a threat to the Constitution every day behind the scenes? As Jeff Flake said yesterday, the poll line yesterday, which we're going to play a lot of it, this is not normal.
Well, and that's the point I wanted to make. Exactly that. You talk about the threat to conservatism, the threat to the Republican Party, and what damage Republicans are doing to themselves. What Jeff Flake is talking about, what he's pointing to, is a bigger problem. That these are truly dangerous times, and that we're living in an age right now where things are beginning to slip away if we don't stand up for what is right.
Are Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, are they the San Andreas fault line of the fracturing of a political party, a major political party, an historic moment? Are they the fault line? Are there going to be more senators to come? As Jeff Flake said yesterday on the floor of the Senate, you know, who else is there? Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you speak up?
Why? So here is some of Republican Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona's speech on the Senate floor yesterday after he announced he will retire rather than seek re-election.
I rise today with no small measure of regret. Regret because of the state of our disunion. Regret because of the disrepair and destructiveness of our politics. Regret because of the indecency of our discourse. Regret because of the coarseness of our leadership. We must never adjust to the present coarseness of our national dialogue with the tone set at the top. The personal attacks, the threats against principles, freedoms and institution, the flagrant disregard for truth and decency, the reckless provocations, most often for the pettiest and most personal reasons, reasons having nothing whatsoever to do with the fortunes of the people that we have been elected to serve. None of these appalling features of our current politics should ever be regarded as normal. We must never allow ourselves to lapse into thinking that that is just the way things are now. It is also clear to me for the moment that we have given in or given up on the core principles in favor of a more viscerally satisfying anger and resentment. To be clear, the anger and resentment that the people feel at the royal mess that we've created are justified. But anger and resentment are not a governing philosophy. Without fear of the consequences and without consideration of the rules of what is politically safe or palatable, we must stop pretending that the degradation of our politics and the conduct of some in our executive branch are normal. They are not normal. Reckless, outrageous, and undignified behavior has become excused and countenanced as telling it like it is, when it is actually just reckless, outrageous, and undignified. And when such behavior emanates from the top of our government, it is something else. It is dangerous to a democracy. I am aware that there is a segment of my party that believes that anything short of complete and unquestioning loyalty to a president who belongs to my party is unacceptable and suspect. If I have been critical, it is not because I relish criticizing the behavior of the President of the United States. If I have been critical, it is because I believe it is my obligation to do so.
And Senator Flake will be joining us later on in the show.
You know, Jeff Flake talking about, again, this lifetime conservative who's dedicated his adult life to conservatism. Conservatism the way Ronald Reagan saw it. Conservatism the way Barry Goldwater saw it, the way William Buckley saw it, the way Russell Kirk saw it. A conservative's conservative by any stretch of the imagination. A guy, Willie, who actually was seen by some as being a troublemaker because he was too conservative. He was too unyielding when it came to cutting spending. I remember he sort of had a reputation in the House as being too far out there, too right-wing.
Wow.
And he's having to explain to his constituents that when he goes against Donald Trump, it's for reasons that have to do with protecting his beliefs, his conservative beliefs that he's held his entire lifetime, that Donald Trump hasn't held even in the 5 years he's been a Republican. But this personality cult is, you can really see it in this story with Jeff Flake, because here you have a guy that people knew. And they knew him forever, and they knew he was conservative, and he's got a 96% lifetime conservative rating. But Donald Trump, as we have been saying around this table for 2 years, since he went down the escalators, he's not a conservative. And yet there's this personality cult that Trump is trying to inspire, and that he does in part by lying every day and convincing people that lies are the truth. And we just showed some of it yesterday. I could pick out 5 things he said yesterday.
You stopped the show
yesterday
yesterday and said, this is just a lie.
But this is...
when he tweeted.
There is a fever in the Republican Party that has nothing to do with conservatism. It has nothing to do with ideology. It has nothing to do with good policy. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Constitution of the United States. And it is bringing this party to its knees and will cause its destruction soon.
And we ask over and over again, for what? For what exactly? Why? What's the cost of doing what Jeff Flake did yesterday? But we saw the cult of personality almost immediately after Jeff Flake's speech yesterday. You had conservatives, Republicans coming out and say, it's easy for this guy to do this. He had an 18% approval rating at home. He was going to lose his race. So he saw the writing on the wall and said, okay, I'm going to get out now before I have to lose a race, and now I'm going to find courage. That's not fair. He just wrote an entire book going after Trump. He's been going after Trump since the campaign. But there is a reflex right now among high-ranking Republicans. Even Mitch McConnell was sort of loath to praise what Jeff Flake did yesterday because they still believe they need to work with Donald Trump to get tax reform. If they want to get an agenda through, they believe they still need the president, so they're going to stick at his side.
Why can't you work with someone but also stick to what's right and sometimes tell them what they feel is wrong? When did a relationship become a one-way street?
It is.
Why is working with President Trump having to declare some sort of loyalty oath and literally throw your entire self-respect down the toilet in order to work with him? I've never seen a relationship like that. That seems healthy.
I've never seen such cowardice, actually.
Complete cowardice.
Among the leaders of the Republican Party, and it is cowardice. They believe that if they cross Donald Trump, he may tweet something bad about them. Wait, hold on.
Let's see.
You've got the most powerful. You've got the most powerful people in America afraid to stand up to the obscene behavior of Donald Trump. His threats, full frontal threats against the Constitution of the United States, because they are afraid of a tweet. And what they would find if they crossed Donald Trump and got in his face is that he would actually respect them more, and they could get a better negotiation. But they're cowards. Is it Allah Pundit? He's one of the good ones.
He's funny.
He's one of the. I don't know who he is, but Allah Pundit's.
No, don't. You'll pay for that.
No, I won't. Allah Pundit's one of the best. There it is.
He's a funny dude.
He tweeted yesterday that in a post-apocalyptic Washington, Speaker Paul Ryan could be seen wandering around amid the ashes saying, staying focused on tax reform.
God.
Staying focused on tax reform. Mitch McConnell, after one of the most extraordinary days in recent Senate history, Mike, said there's a lot of talk. Let's just stay focused on tax reform. Okay. They are
Toss
joking.
to Mitch McConnell.
They are joking, right?
His Uncle Mitch.
Thank you, Mike.
They are joking. I know.
Bob Corker, George Bush, these are not backbenchers. At what point do you have an obligation as a leader of this party to weigh in on these very serious criticisms of the president?
What I have an obligation to do is to try to achieve the greatest cohesion I can among 52 Republicans, to try to achieve for the American people the agenda that we set out to achieve. And tax reform is what we are about. We're going to concentrate on what our agenda is and not any of these other distractions that you all may be interested in.
All this stuff you see on a daily basis on Twitter this and Twitter that, forget about it. Let's focus on helping people, improving people's lives, and doing the things that we said we would do that accomplishes that. That's what we're focused on. You going to ask about this, or? All right, good. Yeah, it's fine.
Mike, it's not Twitter.
What is wrong with them?
We're actually
They're
talking
wusses.
about a United States senator that they know, that Paul Ryan worked with, that was a fellow traveler, going on the Senate floor and saying that the President of the United States was a threat to not only societal norms, but constitutional norms. And Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell both said, oh, you guys just get distracted by Twitter. This has nothing to do with Twitter. This has to do with the United States Senator delivering one of the most significant speeches on the Senate floor in decades?
Yeah, maybe.
Perhaps?
Certainly.
In decades.
And not that it matters, but Paul Ryan was talking about Corker.
If I am wrong, if I'm being melodramatic here,
you're not.
Name me a more important Senate speech in the last decade, because this was the end of a movie. This was our Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where you had a senator saying on the floor that the President of the United States and his party was a threat to constitutional norms, societal norms, and our children.
Yeah.
Well, we're at a point, as we spoke earlier to this, where one major political party is fracturing right in front of us. We're at a moment when cowardice on the floor of the United States Senate trumps conscience, where truth seems to be less powerful than the fear of a tweet from the White House. And Casey, I would ask you, I've heard rumblings over the last 12, almost 24 hours now about resentment toward Jeff Flake's speech on the floor of the Senate from other members of the Senate because they fear it could interfere with tax cuts. What do you hear?
I think that, yes, there is potential resentment and issues around the agenda, this idea, but I honestly, I think what Joe was pointing to, and Mike, what you said about the splintering of this party before our very eyes, these leaders, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, they made a bet that they could outlast Donald Trump. And what is happening is that the people who would consider themselves to be a part of the governing, Jeff Flake, I think, would call it the human decency wing of the Republican Party, are not going to have a home at this rate anymore in this Republican Party. It's because of where their voters are. That's driving frustration among some of the rank and file Republicans in the Senate, because they're having to be led by Mitch McConnell, but they go home and their voters are saying, why aren't you standing up more for President Trump? Why are you being led? Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's approval ratings are sinking. They are becoming less popular. They are becoming a huge problem, and the president is really taking over the party, and that is going to leave so many people with no place to go. As you said, Jeff Flake is not a Democrat. So where do people like that go in our politics? It's increasingly clear that they are homeless, and that we may be witnessing, Jeff Flake said on the floor yesterday, I think this is a moment and we'll get over it. I'm not so sure that we aren't seeing a fundamental restructuring here.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.